We're going to continue delivering strong for our clients, staying true to our people, and giving them the opportunities to grow and ultimately taking care of our families. When we founded Allata, we had this mantra is family first, clients are king, take great care of our people. And those are words that we live by.
Welcome to Decision Points. I'm Scott Wood, and I'm here with Matt Rosen today.
Hey, good to see you, Scott. Thanks for having me on the show.
Matt, welcome. We had a little bit of a hard time getting this one scheduled, but
sorry about that.
That's not your fault. We're here today, so that's what's important. Matt is the founder and CEO of Allata.
Allata, you got it.
All right,
it's not
Allata.
Allata. You can have a lot of fun with it, though.
Allata. All right. Tell us what Allata is.
Yeah, so Allata, we started as a digital consulting firm. That word's a little overdone, but at the end of the day, what we do is help our clients get outcomes that have not usually been done before. So we're helping them with technology strategy. We're helping them design software products. We're helping them do custom development and integration. We're helping them with their data. And now everything's AI transformation, really helping our clients trying to navigate the waves of change as they come. Like every single week, there's a new model and a new thing released, and really just trying to help our clients navigate that while still doing a lot of our core business.
Awesome.
And so our clients are the mid-market. They range from, startups all the way up to some of the Fortune 500, but a lot in the, call it 250 to 5 billion range, corporations that we come alongside their team and help them achieve outcomes that they might not otherwise be able to.
Awesome. Well, I have a lot of questions, selfishly, from a True North perspective on this topic.
We'll definitely get on that.
So we'll spend a little time there. But before we do that, a little bit about your background. Where'd you grow up? Where were you born?
Yeah, so I'm from Miami, Florida, originally, East Coaster. My parents met in Miami and lived there for a couple years. My dad joined the military when I was 2 years old. He was a lawyer on South Beach, and I think he was defending some cocaine cowboys and some not so great characters, bribing people to get bars open. He probably wouldn't like that. We might need to edit some of that out, but I don't know that he's going to listen. But he joined the U.S. military, and so he took us on an adventure all over the place. Lived in Jersey, lived in Germany for a couple of years, lived along the Eastern Seaboard. Did Fort Leavenworth for a year, not in the jail, at the CGSC course, but ultimately landed me in Killeen, Fort Hood for my senior year of high school. So I was a Killeen kangaroo for 1 year.
For 1 year.
Yeah, fell in love with Texas, decided to stay. So I went to Texas A&M, studied biomedical science there. I actually wanted to be a doctor when I broke my leg when I was like 14 years old, and was really interested in just healing and wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon and wanted to pursue a career in medicine. And so went ahead, applied. I actually had a full ride from the Navy and from the Air Force, but turns out medical school didn't want me as much as I wanted them. So quickly realized I needed to find another career path. I could have sat around, tried one more time, probably would have got in, but decided to pursue a different path. So
was this, had you taken the MCAT?
Oh, yeah. I had like a 3.6 and like a 29 in the MCAT. Totally should have gotten in.
What happened?
But I think they saw that I was not probably as empathetic as one needs to be a great doctor. I think I didn't have enough of the good reasons. I'm actually married to a doctor, an OB-GYN named Stephanie. And after being married to her now 15 years and watching her go through residency, I think it was God that intervened and decided that medicine was probably not the right career path for me. And after watching what she goes through, it's a thankless career. It's gotten very difficult to be successful in that space and do what you need to do for patients with just all the things around hospitals and insurance. So I'm glad things worked out the way it did. Mm-hmm. I didn't get in, and when you have a degree from in biomedical science, literally you can go do pharmaceutical sales or medical sales, but that's either commission only or delivering food to doctors' offices. I was like, I could have been one of these folks. I don't want to deliver food to them.
Right.
I was like, I'm going to do something else. So I ended up in sales, and so I interviewed with lots of different organizations and ended up at the Standard Register Company, which is now, I think, defunct. It might be part of Taylor now, but I was selling business forms and business equipment, check stock, paper and paper accessories, I like to call it. It's kind of a little bit like The Office if you've watched that. And quickly realized once I got into that, it was a dying industry.
Sure.
I would go and meet with people and say, let's talk about how information flows through your organization on forms. They're like, we're implementing JD Edwards or SAP or Oracle. And I'm like, I need to go and get on with one of those companies.
Right.
But I didn't have a computer science background. I didn't have any technology expertise. So after that, I spent a year in the video conferencing realm, which is amazing that the Teams and Zooms call we get on for free now used to cost tens of thousands of dollars.
Right.
And I traveled the entire Southwest United States, probably walked in the doors of almost every Fortune 500. Because if you wanted to connect between more than 2 points, you needed a bridge or a bridging service. So I sold the bridging service, but it was a kind of a low margin deal, but it taught me to be really aggressive in opening up doors. I had to make, I'd say, 100 phone calls every day to set appointments. And so that really got me indoctrinated in sales and building relationships and breaking down doors. And that's part of what I enjoy doing even today, is creating new relationships, looking for challenges to solve. But from InView video conferencing, which is also no longer around, I went through a series of consulting firms, got in around the e-commerce era, as the dawn of the internet. Very much reminds me of what we're going through right now in AI, where tons of money was getting pumped into the infrastructure and data centers back then for people to have their online presence. So it's not all that dissimilar to what's happening today. And I spent 4 years at a consulting firm there and fell in love with the industry. And that's what I've been doing for the last 25 years, is really working with organizations to help solve problems with new technology that are typically business problems, but have a technology solution to them.
Right. Awesome. Well, that was great because it's super fast and we got through a lot of really good stuff. Let me back up 1 second.
Sure.
Just for, so the decision points is the title of the podcast. So we always like to, kind of focus in on big decisions in your life that, sort of change the trajectory or the direction. And obviously the decision to not go to medical school, not go to medical school and to pursue something different. The decision was helped obviously because you didn't get accepted, but
yeah, I could have applied again.
But what'd you learn in all that, and what sort of pointed you into the sales, down the sales path?
No, it's a good question, because medicine was something I thought I was always going to do from, age 14 on. I volunteered at doctor's offices in high school. I volunteered at hospitals. I probably didn't go as deep as I needed to. Yeah. But I took a lot of the classes. I found them, interesting. But I don't think the field of medicine would have been the right choice for me. Like you said, the decision was made for me. Yeah. I probably would have spent my mid-20s in the Persian Gulf, which would have been fine. That would have been the path I would have taken. Right. I'd still be here. Don't know. Yeah. Might have been on an
So
aircraft
would you have
carrier.
Gone in the medicine through the military?
Yeah, the timing would have aligned where I'd have been in the second Persian Gulf War. And so, I guess I didn't end up going there, but I would have done my duty to country if that's the way that cards had it played out, because I grew up in a military family, have a lot of respect for the military. In fact, a lot of the philanthropic efforts I do are towards military causes and those that defend our freedoms. So I'm pretty passionate about that, but ultimately that was not the path I was going to take. And so I had to do a lot of introspection and say, what am I really good at? Because growing up, in my family, you could either be a doctor or a lawyer. Right. So there's 3 lawyers in my family, number of healthcare professionals. And so the thought of going into business and going into sales, my parents were like, what are you doing? Yeah. What is that?
You're throwing your life away.
Yeah. You'd have made a great doctor. Yeah. In fact, they even used to say that up until a couple of years ago. I'm like, I'm married to a doctor. I'd have been terrible.
Right.
So I think it was somewhat fate somewhat determined that path for me to go down the sales path. But I have always been a little bit of an entrepreneur. Growing up, I delivered the Washington Post. That was actually my very first job. I had a lawn mowing business. I babysat. I always had different odd jobs. I've done every odd job you can think of. And what doing all those allowed me to learn is I wanted to do something with my mind. I did not want to work with my hands or my back. Right. Didn't want to, I did, shorter, cook. I drove delivery. I've waited tables. I've worked at bars. I owned a bar. And I decided that was not going to be the path I wanted to take. So it was a lot of lessons learned along the way that kind of got me towards, a career in sales, because, I am outgoing. I like being around people. I get my energy from being with people. I love doing stuff like this. And so I needed a career where I was going to be kind of front and center, talking to people, getting to know them, building relationships. I had to move 7 times in 13 years to like 8 different schools. So it's like if I couldn't make friends quickly, I didn't have any. Right. So I leveraged those skills of learning to create relationships with people quickly, get to know folks, find things in common to really propel my career in sales, which then ultimately led me down an entrepreneurial path, which I'm sure we'll talk about here soon.
So let me ask you a question. How old are you?
I'm 49.
49. Okay. So you're 49. You've had this business now for
9 years.
9 years, yeah. Okay. So 9 years. So that was really the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah. So anytime you're in sales, you're a bit of an entrepreneur. Sure. Even if you're working for a company, you're going out, you're building your own book of business. They might give you a territory, but that's kind of guidelines of what you're going to do. Right. I've always worked for smaller companies for the most part. They never said, hey, here's your 10 accounts and don't stray from them. Yeah. It's kind of a little bit of an eat what you kill type of model. Yeah. So from when I got my start in consulting, I covered Dallas, then I took over Austin office, then I helped in Houston, then I worked for a CRM consulting firm, which is actually where you and I
That's right.
met. was
that
out
was
there.
Sales Logics.
Yeah, I was
right?
at Sendix West Snow. We got to know one another.
Well, shout out to Wes.
Yeah. Yeah, and there I was selling technology to business owners and sales leaders, and I had a copy of ACT at that video conferencing firm, and it was really cool because I knew everything that was happening in my territory that I inherited somewhat of, but there's also things that had not worked out, but I had that all in a system, and so I fell in love with that technology, and literally that was my career for about 10 years, was working for Wes and then starting a CRM practice within a larger firm called Paraveda, which is really where I learned the non-sales side of consulting. I had, when I went from Wes to Paraveda, I had to oversee every project I sold, which I had only sold projects, said, hey, delivery team, good luck.
Right.
If it all goes well,
Right.
I'll check in, I'll buy lunches, but didn't really get in the weeds. And it was at that firm that I had to really get deep in project management, really overseeing client challenges, because every big technology project has its issues.
For sure.
And they never go well. And I think 60-80% of them fail. It's because they fail to be managed, and communication isn't managed, or there's not the right leadership involvement. And so I got really good at diving in deep and helping get projects on the right track when they went off course. And so it was at that firm that I learned the financial aspects, the operational aspects, the people hiring, people growth, and that's what really made me a much more well-rounded professional that ultimately teed me up to be able to start my own thing.
So at what point along the path did you realize you were an entrepreneur?
I think...
Or at what point did you get frustrated where you were like, I can do this better myself?
Well, I got frustrated everywhere I worked.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think I spent longer than, I think up until Paraveda, I never spent more than a couple years anyway.
They one place.
Yeah, I would always get bored and be like, I can do this better.
Yeah.
If it was my book or my business. And, ultimately, when I decided to launch my own, I'd been through enough of those experiences. I was well positioned. I'd look back at some of the journals I'd written. I thought about doing this all the way back to 2009.
Uh-huh.
I just wasn't ready.
Yeah.
I wasn't well-rounded enough. I didn't have all the knowledge I needed, the connections I needed. And so it was interesting. I spent 7 years at Paraveda, which was a great firm. Bruce and John, the guys that founded it, are still friends of mine, good mentors, and they grew a lot of really good talent in that firm. That's what they were all about, was growing people into these just well-rounded consultants, teaching them both the sales and the business development, the relationship, but also understanding the complexity of organizations, figuring out how to bring in technology to help solve difficult problems. And it was a really cool experience. It was really hard at times.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot. And from there, I worked for about 1.5 years helping a real estate software company that had a software arm get off the ground. And unfortunately, I was working for a bad actor, and there was a lot of us that got lured in by this fella, and we'll leave the names out of it.
Sure.
To protect the innocent, or not so innocent. But anyhow, I worked there, and I realized that it was time to go off on my own.
Yeah.
And I was really fortunate to have a relationship with a client called the Freeman Companies, and they had been my biggest client at Paraveda. They had been my biggest client at this other spot. And when I was leaving again, they're like, seriously, you're leaving us again? I was like, well, I think I can figure out a deal where I can take you with me. It's going to cost me a lot of money, but if I go start my own firm, will you be my first client?
Yeah.
And they're like, go hang out your banner.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, so that's how it got started.
So along this path, I don't want to dwell here too long, but when you're at Paraveda, were you frustrated? Did you show up at work every day and you're frustrated and irritated, or was it more like, this is a necessary evil and I'm good being here right now because I know it's going to lead to something else?
It was kind of both.
Yeah.
It's a good organization, but the way they kind of built it is everyone gets paid the same at each level.
Yeah.
And there's really not a variable compensation element to it.
Yeah.
And that was by design, because Bruce, who's the founder, felt like variable compensation drove unnatural behavior. And he's right, it does.
Yeah.
I've commissioned salespeople today. They're great, but they do things to drive their own commission, which
Right.
you expect them to do. But that was an issue for me, because while I was there, I had a book of business that was many times larger than a number of my peers. And when you're all making the same amount of money, you're like, that's just not really fair.
Right.
And so, I went and I asked, I was like, hey, is there anything we can do for additional comp? I was flying to San Francisco. I was flying to Chicago to help those offices. I've got 2 young daughters, Taylor and Peyton. At the time, they were babies. And I was telling my wife, hey, I've got to jump on a plane to go help these other offices be successful. She's like, do you get anything else for that? I was like, no. She's like, well, why are you going? So I went and I asked the leadership. I was like, hey, if I'm going to go, if I help them grow 10% or 50%, can I get a component of that? And they're like, sorry, that's just not the way we work. I was like,
Yeah.
that's time for me to start taking phone calls.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you went to this other group for 1 year, Bad Actor, and then you started Allata.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. So let's jump ahead. What was your vision when you started the company?
So when I was at this other company, and I lovingly refer to it as dipshit partners.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I do talk about it. And so
we've all had those, by the way. Yeah.
So while I was there, I was on the road quite a bit. We were launching a software product to the real estate investment market, and it was pretty cool at the time. And so I was flying to New York. Midtown is where most of the real estate asset management firms are, or to Orange County, which was really fun for the first year.
Yeah.
But I was on the road a lot, and my wife's a doctor, and she was very supportive. But one of her partners unfortunately got cancer, and so that woman came out of the call pool. Meaning, my wife was on call every 5 days and every fifth weekend, and we had our daughters were like I think 4 and 1 at the time. I'm like, I'm going to be on the road every other week, and I was going to all these fun places, and she was holding down the fort, and it really put a real strain on the marriage. And so when I decided that I was going to leave and start my own thing, she's like, hey, this has to be family first. She's like, you cannot be on the road nonstop like you were. Like, that's not going to work, and keep this family together. And so when we founded Allata, we had this mantra: is family first, clients are king, take great care of our people. And those are words that we live by. They're not just on the wall. It's like when times get tough, we really stick to them. So we invest a lot in growing our people.
Say that again slowly.
Yes, sorry, I talked
That's
fast.
Okay. No,
so if you're listening to this in 1, 2, 5,
we're gonna,
1.5
we're going to slow it down to 0.75. Yeah. So say those words again. They're really good.
Yeah. So it's family first.
Yeah.
Clients are king. We take great care of our people. And so we feel like if we can build a culture where people can grow, we've got a growth framework that we built where people can get promoted every year and have ample opportunity to grow within the firm and have a mentor that's dedicated, and they get reviewed twice a year. So we really invest heavily in people growth. That was something I learned from Paraveda, and they had a framework they used, which had come from Anderson, which had come from Booz. So we felt like we were standing on the shoulders of giants,
right,
in building out our growth framework that really was pertinent to Allata and the type of firm we were trying to build. And then clients are king is, there's a lot of firms out there that, as they get bigger, they get inwardly focused and focus on internal initiatives. And heck, for the first couple of years, it was like, if you're not selling or billing, I'm not sure what you're doing. Obviously, you get into a certain size and scale, you have to have HR and legal and a CFO. But for the longest time, we didn't have that. And so the key is you hire great people, they do great work for your clients, then the cycle repeats itself. The clients tell their friends, you hire more great people, you grow them. But it's all being done for our families at the end of the day. And it's all for most people, that's why they wake up and do anything.
When Stephanie came to you and said, okay, it's got to be family first, and this has got to be the priority, were you on board, or were you a little resistant initially, or were you like, why is she like, I'm not that guy, like, or was it obvious to you?
No, it was pretty obvious.
It was.
No, I wanted to spend time with my kids.
So that was an easy conversation.
Yeah, when we were growing up, there's 4 of us, and one of my brothers actually works for me. I'm the oldest of 4. I got 2 brothers and a sister. One brother's a real estate developer, and then our sister's a lawyer. She's the youngest. And my dad was around, but he was always busy. And so. Love them, great folks. They're still together after 53 years. But, that generation was focused more on work.
Yeah.
And so I was looking at these 2 little girls. I'm like, I want to be there. I want to do more. And so as a result, maybe I go to all their dance competitions. I take them to lots of campouts. I try and take them to school in the mornings, or at least drop them off at the bus. I'm not always there in the evenings because, in the business I'm in, you end up with a lot of happy hours and evening events.
Yeah.
But I try and at least be there in the mornings for them.
Yeah.
And I do go on the road, but it's limited. And we've got a global team. I mean, I've got people in England. I've got people in Argentina and India. And while I do go and visit those spots, I try and do it maybe once a year or once every other year. And I'm very fortunate to have a senior team that gets on the road and understands some of my limitations from a travel standpoint, and really have built the company to help manage around that. So, back directly to your question, my wife would not have been supportive of me starting a firm if I didn't focus on family. If I said, hey, we're going to have people traveling all over the place and never at home and not working in their hometowns, that'd have been a non-starter.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so where's the name come from?
Yes, so glad you asked. So Allata, there's no English words left. If you go and try and find a domain, like, good luck. You can hire a naming agency, but my old house that I lived in had a big wall of bamboo, and when I knew I was leaving my last firm to start this, I was sitting there with Stephanie having a glass of wine or maybe a bottle, and we were like, we got to come up with a name. And she's like, well, why don't you name it after bamboo? We got this cool wall of bamboo in the backyard. And so I started doing some research, and bamboo, for those who don't know, it's like the fastest growing plant on the planet. It's structurally stronger than steel, but it's super flexible. It's renewable, sustainable. It's good luck in many cultures. And as I started going down the rabbit hole of research around bamboo, I found this I guess a genus or species. All my biomedical science stuff is totally out the window at this point, but it's called the crook stem. It's like the hardiest bamboo in North America, and it has another name, the Allata, A-L-A-T-A. And so I was like, well, is that taken? It was. I was like, what if I had an L to it? And all of a sudden, I had Allata. And one of the unforeseen things is that when you start with an A, anytime you sponsor anything, your name's at the top.
Yeah, there you go.
Everyone's got AAA, auto, or whatnot.
Right.
I didn't even think about that at the time, but that's where the name comes from, and it's got some deep meaning. I wanted originally the firm to be a group of individuals that could stand strong alone, but part of a highly networked team. If you look at bamboo, each stalk might look a little different, but it's like a highly networked organism underneath the ground, and it grows literally, faster than anything else. I had some in my yard until I put a wall in. There'd be a little stalk pop up. Next thing you know, like 3-foot bamboo shoots all over the backyard.
Yeah.
Once that stuff's in, you're not getting it out. And
that's right.
Maybe a good or bad analogy.
So do you have bamboo at your new house?
I have a little bit, yes.
Yeah. Just you got to.
Yeah. I got some black bamboo. It's not as invasive.
That's good. All right. So you start in 2016.
That's right.
It's you and.
It was me and a developer named Tad.
Okay.
We were the first two billing, and for the first...
Is Tad still with you?
He's not, but he was great. He was an iOS developer, built an app for Freeman. No, he was with me for almost 3 years, and then came back and did some work. He was a freelance guy, but great guy. And
so literally 2 men in a truck.
Yeah.
Or a garage.
I was actually working in a room detached from my house on the other side of a garage that had pretty poor air conditioning, and that's where I started the company. In fact, it wasn't until like 2019 that we actually had a physical office in Dallas. We rented some space from a buddy of mine. But the way we started the firm was with the Freeman Company, and they had bought a business in Boise, Idaho. And so Boise, if you've never been there, beautiful town, very unspoiled. It's kind of been discovered since COVID. But in 2016, there was Boise State was pumping out lots of talent. You got BYU, Idaho. You got lots of BYU kids that move up there. There's a nice commuter mountain, 45 minutes outside of town. And real estate was inexpensive, and talent was inexpensive as well at the time. And Freeman had bought a company up there, and the fellow whose company they bought, somewhat a little bit self-servingly, told both me and Freeman that, hey, Boise is this great place for talent. And until COVID hit, he was absolutely right.
Yeah.
And so I flew up there with the VP of App Dev at Freeman. Her name's Trish Webb. She's now my chief strategy officer. And so she and I went and toured Boise and decided, hey, this is a great place for us both to build a talent base, because Dallas in 2016, trying to hire developers was extremely difficult. Everybody wanted people on site. The Freeman offices off of Regal Row were not in the nicest location. I didn't have an office, so it's like, hey, we had this huge project. I'd written a 5-year roadmap to help consolidate business processes and systems. And so we both decided to build in Boise. So my first employee was a guy named Phil Leary, who's my COO today. And he and I had worked together at Paraveda. And, when he and I sat down, I said, hey, I'm starting this firm. I need someone to start Boise. He's like, heck, that's on my short list of places I want to live. And so he and his wife moved up there and started hiring people, and we started building people here in Dallas. And literally what I did was I had this big project that had almost an endless supply of people needed. So I pretty much called everyone I'd ever worked with in consulting, either clients or former colleagues, and said, hey, will you either come work for me or be my client?
Yeah.
That's what you got to do when you start a consulting business. And we were fortunate to have a big client that allowed us to hire a lot of the leadership team that's still with me today.
So that first relationship with Freeman really was the launching pad for the business.
Yeah. A big shout out to guys like Joe Popolo, who's not there anymore, but Richard Moranville, Michelle Johnson, and Trish, who actually went on a sabbatical and then came back and ended up working with us. And so had some real supportive folks there that still friends with today that were super supportive of me in getting Allata off the ground. And so it's fantastic to have an anchor client that was that supportive. But I knew early on, like, in consulting, clients will only do projects for so long, or we'll get fatigued, or projects will end and stall. So we had to very quickly start landing the next set of clients. And so that's what I got hyper-focused on as I was bringing in this great leadership team. I stayed focused on business development, and in year 2, we brought in like 10 more clients, and we had an amazing growth curve. I think we went from like $500,000 in 2016 to by like 2019, we're doing over 20 million in revenue.
Wow.
So it was a really fast growth story, and it was a really exciting time in the business, being able to hire so many of my friends and give them great opportunities and bring on new clients, that many of which are still friends. And, the interesting thing about my leadership team, like half of them worked with me at a previous consulting firm. The other half were like my buyers,
Right.
people that I sold services to that decided to jump over, try their hand at consulting, and realize they really loved it.
Yeah, it's great. So how, from 16 to 19 with the hyper growth, and that's continued. I mean, you guys are still growing like crazy. How have you been able to maintain Stephanie's initial guidance, which is, hey, this has got to be family first? And I mean, how are you able to balance the strains of, a hyper growth company?
You hire great leaders.
Yeah.
Folks like, Eric Jensen and David Brown and Stephen Duffy and David Romeo and folks like that. There's a few folks that are not with us anymore, like Justin Channon, people like that I could just trust with things. I'm not a micromanager. I'm not even really a macro manager. I set goals and get the hell out of people's way. And so I entrusted people to, when we started a new project, opened a new office, started a new service offering. It's like, I'm going to give this to you. Don't F it up.
Yeah.
Those are my words of wisdom.
Yeah.
And for the most part, they haven't.
So your vision in 16 was what?
Stay alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a crazy contractor try and steal our first project out from under us. I had the owner of the previous firm I was at kind of gunning for me a little bit, making life difficult, sending letters whenever he got the chance. That was always fun. And so, I felt like people were gunning for me. A lot of people knew about this project I was doing at Freeman, and I felt like every firm in town was trying to break in. Or people were calling me being like, hey, if you don't hire me to be there, I'm going to go sell against you. So I felt like everybody was gunning for me a little bit. So I was like, I got to get to scale and get past this relationship as fast as I can so that I can have a sustainable company. And so from really 16 up until 20, it was Dallas, Boise. Through a client relationship, we actually opened up a Phoenix office, had an opportunity to do some work for a bank there that had done for a bank here in Dallas. And so, got up to about a dozen people in Phoenix. But then obviously we all know what happened in 2020.
Right.
COVID hit. Freeman, largest client, went from 7,000 employees down to like 700.
Yeah.
I had 20 people like literally hit the bench, which in consulting is not billable, or the beach, whatever you want to call it. And so we had to very quickly restaff everyone and do everything we could to avoid any type of layoffs. And we were fortunate. We had some clients in the medical supply chain. We had some clients in banking, industries that were not as hard hit. So they were able to absorb a lot of those folks. So we didn't let a single person go during COVID or the years after that.
Yeah.
We were able to quickly pivot. And what that did was it changed everyone who is like geolocated and had wages in that town. Once everyone went virtual, that went away.
Yeah.
People were calling from New York and San Francisco and paying New York, San Francisco wages to people in Dallas and people in Boise. So the market got just hyper competitive. And as we hit into 21 and 22, we literally couldn't hire people fast enough to staff all the demand. And that was the same for most consulting firms and technology companies out there. And we actually partnered with a group in India that's now part of Allata, called Emerald. Great guys, Pete, Manish, and Abhi, that were the leaders of that firm. And we started with two of their folks. And at first everyone's like, really, do we want to? I mean, everyone's has a bad experience with an Indian development team. And if you find the right team, they're fabulous people and really dedicated to their work and quick learners and great culture, great folks. But it's finding the right group, as it is with any business. Sure. It's all about the people. And we found a truly great group of people that became our partners and helped us scale for all the needs in 21 and 22 to help supplement all the developers we had here.
All right. So again, I want to go back to vision for a second, because today the company's got how many employees?
350.
350 employees, top line revenue.
It's a little over 40.
40 million.
Yeah.
So did you envision that in 16?
No.
Like it was literally like, I got a client, I got Tad, we're going to go do some work, and
that was it.
And we'll see what happens.
It grew way faster than any expectations I had for it.
Yeah.
And as we were going along the way, I mean, I think we were like number 40 one year, number 52 the next year on the Inc. 500. Eventually the law of big numbers caught up with us. But no, I had no idea it was going to take off
so
that fast.
Like right place, right time. Like what would you attribute the success to?
A lot of it comes down to the people that came to work for me and the clients that believed in me. It was let's see, I started in this business in 2000. I started the firm in 16. So it was all that 16 years. I never lost connection with people that I worked with and respected. I never lost touch with clients. So when I hung up my own shingle and said, hey, I'm
doing
open for
this.
business. I was surprised by the outpouring of support I got from people.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And both people that risked their careers to come work for me, or clients that went on a limb to give us our first project. We're really, really fortunate. It is a little bit right place, right time, but that's what our business is all about. People are entrusting us to achieve outcomes that generally haven't been accomplished before. So you're selling the invisible a little bit.
Right.
You're selling on faith, and people usually, if you screw up the project, if they're not losing their job, they at least look really bad.
Right.
So people aren't like doing a Google search to find folks. I guess it's relationship, it's referral, it's long-term relationships. And so I'd luckily built up 16 years of goodwill in a lot of places that as had everybody I hired.
Yeah.
So when they came on board and said, hey, I got a friend over here, maybe they'll
There's
take a meeting.
compounding effect to the relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's how we were able to achieve the success. The success we had was the 16 years previous of doing good work for folks, and then having a network of people that were willing to follow, join the team, join the mission, and move forward. We felt like we were building a different type of firm, and I feel like we've accomplished that.
At what point, and this is always an interesting question, and I won't lead the witness, but at what point did you realize we've got something?
It was probably 2018.
Yeah.
Because I think in 2016 we did about $500,000. In 2017 it was 5, and then we went to 15, and saw no signs of slowing down. I was like, when I registered for Inc. and saw like the 6,000% growth, I'm like, wow,
yeah,
this is something.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna be able to keep this up that long.
Yeah. All right. So at some point along the way, you start thinking about capitalization and bigger scaling type problems. Talk to us a little bit about sort of how that process started to enter into your thinking.
Yeah, so it was like during COVID and having everyone go remote, one of the things we recognized is we maybe had a lot less control of our destiny in terms of we had people in 17 states, we had people across the globe. We were getting into bigger and bigger projects, taking on larger and larger risk. I mean, I had a contract with one client where we had literally unlimited liability. We were building something for a fitness company, kind of their new online presence, and so we're dealing with a lot of sensitive customer data. And I was like, heck, we just hired a lot of people that we don't know all that well.
Right.
And we've got this unlimited liability project. Like, that's a huge risk. And we ended up delivering well, and that relationship went well. But we started working with bigger and bigger firms and taking on more liability. And obviously we had insurance and things for all that, but still, we were doing things at a scale that I hadn't imagined when I started the firm. And we're with companies and leaders I didn't know as well as I did, say, the Freeman family.
Yeah.
And so at the same time, there was a huge race for talent. And so we actually tried to start up our own center in Costa Rica with a partner that really didn't work out very well. And then we had this partner in India that, was really interesting. But, as I went to my banker at the time, I said, hey, if we wanted to go buy one of these firms, what's that look like? What does that look like?
Yeah.
And if you're a solopreneur, it's not great. You're like, hey, we'll give you 4 times EBITDA. I was like, well, most of the firms in my space are trading at a minimum of 8 to 10.
Right.
So I was like, so I got to come out of pocket for the rest of it. They're like, yeah.
And personally guarantee it.
Yeah, personally guarantee it. That's right. And, at that point, in 2022, we were almost, we were in the mid 30s million wise. And I was like, this is getting a little bit big for me to continue to bear the risk of this enterprise. I was like, we've got to acquire someone. We need to continue to grow. We need to continue to do business with these large clients. And it was hard to sleep at night sometimes. And I was like, I'd really like to have someone that has the experience with the capital markets, that has the experience with M&A, and someone else that can help bear the risk of growing this to a larger enterprise. So that's ultimately where I made a decision. I had met a banker, I'll give him a shout out, got him Greg Fink at Equitech. I think he knows like half my friends in Dallas now, who's had a lot of success here in this town. And I met him through another buddy named Greg Alexander, founder of a group called Collective 54. I'm part of YPO. I know you are as well. And joined the collective to be around other professional service firms leaders.
Yeah.
And what I didn't realize was that professional services firms were trading for much higher multiples, than they had ever in the past. It seems like PE is taking over the world and finally decided that, hey, this is an interesting sector and one that we're going to invest in. And so in 21, Greg Fink took us on a couple dates, I would say, introduced us to a couple large strategics, a couple private equity shops, and said, hey, would this be interesting? And frankly, at the time, it just wasn't. The people we met, our values and vision weren't aligned. And so we decided, hey, this isn't a path we want to go down. But in 2022, I realized that there really is not a moat around the consulting business. So there's not a moat around the clients. There's not a moat around the people. And so I said, you know what? We want to buy our India partner. We probably need to build something or buy something in South America. Some of our larger clients are like, hey, we absolutely love your folks in the United States, but we want to scale larger. We've got other firms that have these offshore, nearshore presences, and you don't.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do about that?
So it's becoming a competitive disadvantage.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I said, well, we could continue the path we're on and constrain growth, or we could look for a partnership to continue to grow. And so we had the folks at Equitech actually build a book for us, run a process, and see what we could get. And what I quickly realized during that time, I talked to the strategics out there, the large consulting firms. We talked to other firms like ours that have been acquired by our private equity firm, and some of them were interesting, and some of them were actually friends of mine. But ultimately, we decided, hey, if we're going to take on outside capital, we want to be the platform. Like, we believed the Allata brand, the story, the management team was the story that we believed in. So I said when I even started the process, is that this isn't good for our people and our clients. We're not going to do anything.
Yeah.
We can hit the brakes and say no deal to everyone. But as it turned out, we had 3 different private equity firms give us really interesting offers to be platforms and to help us with the capital we needed to buy in South America. So we bought a firm in Argentina and ultimately acquire India partner and allow us to scale globally. And so we partnered with a group called CIBC out of Chicago. They've been around since the 70s, good group of guys. They've been a solid partner. We've been with them for 3 years. We've had our ups and downs. It was exactly what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Still our partners today.
No surprises.
No, the great thing about YPO and having networks like that is when you get to know folks that are in that space, you know what you're walking into.
Right.
And, it's like I knew I could have continued to bear all the risk myself and have sleepless nights or find a really good partner that I knew would be supportive of the business and of us and our growth story to help share and shoulder in the risk and help with the capital markets, help with the M&A. So it's exactly what I thought I was signing up for.
What would you say the biggest challenge has been?
So the biggest challenge
and before you answer, just, private equity, everybody's sort of like, they're the villains, they're the evil villains, right? But there is good private equity out there, but it does sometimes come with strings attached.
Yeah, so a lot of it comes down to knowing the private equity firm and doing some back channel research and not going with the first one that comes along. And the nice thing was we had 3 to choose from. There's a group out of Boston that, great guys, unfortunately, didn't have as great a terms as the group out of Chicago for all the leaders. And then there was a group out of New York who they, in many ways, would have been a fantastic partner. They came out of large strategic consulting firms, but they just weren't nice.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't think I've shared this anywhere, but I'll share it on your podcast. I mean, they literally sat with me in a conference room here in Dallas and said, we go from founder-led to professionally managed. I said, so I'm going to be out of a job in 18 months? And they didn't say anything.
Yeah.
And they're all, it's like, hey, this is really cute. You built this nice little firm.
Right.
Go ahead and step aside. Let the pros take over.
Right.
And, knowing what I know now, I probably would have packed them into their plane, sent them back to New York, and not dealt with them again.
Yeah.
I was told to keep them in the process to have some competitive tension, even though I had no desire to partner with these yahoos.
Yeah.
And, but luckily there was 2 folks at the table that we thought would be good partners for us that really got to know us, got to know our business, our people. Could tell they cared and realized it was a people business. This isn't about coming in and cutting expenses. This is about putting fuel on the fire to grow and making investments and doing the right things for the people. And they've continued to do that. What was the question again?
Well, so I got another question, and then I'll come back to the original question. Was it difficult to find a private equity group that aligned with you from a values perspective? Luckily, you ended up with 2.
Yeah, luckily no.
Okay.
Because we were able to get our name in front of enough folks, and we built a good business. And I feel like the leadership team worked well together. I feel like we had a good story, a good business.
And I'm sure Greg, it sounds like Greg did his job because he was able to find the right people.
Phil and Trish are great partners in leading the business, and with a team of leaders underneath them that kept the day-to-day running as we were doing our thing. And what's interesting is we went and we shared with the leadership team what we were doing. Everyone was super excited.
Yeah,
they were surprised.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, we're going to be a platform. We're going to grow.
Yeah.
We're going to have more opportunity. And, that has been what's provided. Hasn't been easy. I mean, when interest rates, went up, that put a damper on capital spending. And then you get an election cycle where no one wants to do anything because they're waiting to see what happens. So I would say the last 12 to 18 months have had its challenges. And then you've had the advent of AI, and everyone thinks AI is going to take over and do everything. And there are things it's going to take over, and it's changing rapidly. But it's definitely created a lot of uncertainty in the market. And most of the firms in my space have either been flat or slightly declining, or some that I know have declined quite a bit. And so it's been a tough macro environment. I'm not one to ever make excuses, but literally people just haven't had money to spend, or they're waiting to see what AI is going to do to figure out where and how they should spend. And well, we had a pretty diversified set of clients. I would say the last 12 to 18 months haven't been without their challenges, but the way I look at it, the only thing you could do is continue to plow forward. I've been through now 4 of these. In 2001 when the tech bubble burst and the planes hit the World Trade Center, the great financial crisis. COVID luckily was kind of a short one, but then it was kind of sped up by a lot of spend. But this has been one of the harder ones. But I feel like things are starting to settle down. People are starting to understand the role AI is going to play. And we're looking to just capitalize on that market position, use our expertise to really help our clients navigate what the next couple of years are going to look like.
So the question was, what's the maybe the biggest negative surprise with the PE, and then what's the best thing that's come out of it? And you may have already hit on the best thing, which is the strategic and the M&A and the capital.
The strategic has been allowing us to do things we wouldn't have been able to do, or I wouldn't have taken the risk to personally. I mean, I probably would have figured out a way to get our India partner on board, but I wouldn't have South America. I couldn't have done that on my own. I wouldn't have had the know-how to do that on my own. And, we're looking at other, potential strategic acquisitions, and looked at quite a bit, and it's hard. It's a people business. You want to find people that are aligned culturally, and, you have to kiss a lot of frogs to find a prince. And then from a negative standpoint, I think the biggest challenge is, when you finance something with debt and the cost of debt goes up, it constrains your ability to do as many things as you were able to do. I've never had a leveraged balance sheet in the past, but that's how most, PEs work, is they lever things up, and, you expect interest rates to stay normal when they jump up as much as they did. It just leaves less breathing room to operate. And so that was something that I've become a student of now.
So interesting point there, because before you said, the liability was keeping me awake at night. The reality is you probably have more liability now, sort of from a corporate perspective, because you have a levered balance sheet and you have a lot more exposure, but you're probably sleeping better at night.
Yeah, overall I am. It still worries me.
Of course.
It's not something I don't think about every day.
Of course, but it's not all on you.
I didn't personally guarantee it. No one's going to come take my house. At least I don't think so.
You got partners that are sharing the burden.
They jokingly were like, "Hey, the last thing we need to do closes. You personally signed this note." I'm like, "I'm not doing that."
Sorry.
No deal.
That didn't happen. All right, so let's talk about for a minute. So this is obviously a recap moment for you. Because you're still very much in control of the business, and if you want to kind of talk about percentages of what they ended up buying, fine. If you don't, no problem there. But let's talk about sort of where you are today with the recap, and then the one thing I want to talk about a little bit is how it's changed for you personally, because obviously now you've got a little bit of liquidity, I'm assuming, that you're able to take off the table. And so how does that change your risk profile in terms of the way you think about the business?
Recaps are nice, and we have been blessed to have always done pretty well and lived below our means. And made some real estate investments and made some other investments. We tried to not to materially change things. It's allowed us to give more, and we're big believers in giving to those that can't help themselves, those who are trying to better lives through STEM, or those who defend our freedoms. And so that's pretty important to my wife and I. And for the longest time, we had done 1% of net income to charity, and we still probably equalize that, in terms of what we give each year to causes we really care about. So that's pretty important to me, is giving back to those in those kind of categories, if you will. And then from a control standpoint, we do have a majority partner, but they allow us to operate as if, we still are
run
in control.
Everything.
Yeah. I mean, they're not operators.
Right.
They're finance guys. And that was one of the things I was looking for, was a group that they weren't experts in the consulting business, like the one that went from founder-led to professionally managed. And there's a million people that they could replace me with. That's not this group's MO. And they've been very supportive as we've kind of gone through things over the last few years, and have really shown their support for me and the team. So if they end up listening, hopefully they appreciate that. For me personally, it's been a lot of fun. I'm a builder. I think we will work to position the company by the end of the decade for another exit. Might be to another financial sponsor, could be to a strategic, depending on, if they allow the things that we care about to live on. Time will tell what direction we take. But until then, we're going to continue, delivering strong for our clients, staying true to our people, and giving them the opportunities to grow, and ultimately taking care of our families.
So you touched on something there that I think about a lot at True North, which is how do we perpetuate this culture beyond a pair of founders, and obviously when you start to bring in outside capital, like there's a lot of potential for change from a cultural perspective. So how are you today putting things in place that will allow the culture that you've created to live on past this next event potentially at the end of the decade?
Yeah. So, it's continuing to invest in our growth framework, continuing to invest in our people, continuing to stay at the bleeding edge of technology, and allowing people to gain certifications and skills and what the next decade will bring. It's continue to invest in the communities that we work and live in. Those are the big things. It's just we've kept doing what we've always done that made us successful in the process.
Do you feel like you've got a group of next level leaders that are very bought in culturally, that when you step aside one day and you're still very young, but can kind of fill in that behind you?
Yeah, they tell me they are.
Yeah.
They're listening, hopefully.
Yeah.
No, we've got a number of 30 and 40 something folks that are coming up fast and are great leaders, and I intend to be around for a while, or for as long as whoever I'm with will have me.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of years left, and I've still got a daughter who's 11, and till she graduates.
Some time.
Yeah. I need to be around the house to make sure she's got someone to make sure she's got her lunch for the day.
That's right.
Someone to make her breakfast. So we are growing the next generation of leaders.
Do you know Rand Stagan? I'm sure you do.
I do know Rand. Yeah.
This is something that's very much top of mind for Rand now, is like, how do we create, we've as entrepreneurs, we've worked very hard to build these businesses that are sort of culturally, culture is very important, and how we take care of people and all the things we've talked about for the last 30 minutes. But how do we perpetuate that on? Because there is, to a degree, for a business to be healthy and growing, sometimes you do need outside capital. Sometimes you do need a private equity partner. We've done the same thing at True North. So how do you bring those elements in that actually help the company be healthier, from a growth perspective, and then, maintain this long view of culture and alignment and, philosophy?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to just continuing to get the leadership team together and continuing to focus on the values, investing in their growth. I've been looking at some different opportunities. Are there some leadership courses? Rand is one of the guys that came to mind, and there's some other folks out there as well. But a lot of it is just giving people the opportunity to lead.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of leaders of firms, they can't get out of their own way.
Yeah.
And I've really tried hard to be like one of the hardest things for me was giving up sales.
Yeah.
I had to hire professional sellers, and I had to give them opportunity to do things without me in the way. That's probably the hardest thing I had to do, was to let go of all the client relationships I had and all the sales I like to lead, and lead through others and help them be successful. Now I've got 4 folks that are really solid and charging ahead, and
it's great.
That wouldn't happen unless I was able to sit back. So a lot of it's, we've got, a fractional coach for them, and then myself and my strategy officer invest in them, and they are what bring revenue to the company. Obviously, revenue is oxygen to any firm.
Yeah.
So it's a critical function for us, and we've made investments in marketing and partnerships, and given those people a lot of growth opportunities. And then for our consulting organization, it's operating at a global scale, and then delving into AI, which and the latest technology around that has given them a lot of opportunity to grow. And then it's continuing to give back to our communities. It's continuing to invest in our growth process, continuing to promote from within. And that's really the formula that's worked for us. So I don't know if that fully answers your question.
Yeah, that's good. All right, I got 2 more things, and then we'll wrap. So we got to talk about AI for a minute, because it's what everybody's talking about. So I'm a business owner. I've got a small company. We're trying to figure out how we leverage AI. There's all kinds of things hitting the screen every day. New apps coming out every day. How does a business owner think about entering into the world of AI
Sure. Well, I can tell you what we did, and it's what we preach to our clients. It's not right for everyone. We're fortunate that we're a custom development and data shop, and AI is fed by data and integrating with systems. The challenge you have today is you've got all these engines out there, all these frontier models from Chat to Claude to Gemini to, you name it. There's I think over 100 of them. And then you got, tools like Microsoft Copilot, and you've got the big enterprise software, Salesforce, SAP offering theirs. And then you've probably got a million little niche solutions coming at you. And then everything changes every week. So I feel like everyone's just almost in what one of my leaders calls the fog of war. There's so much stuff happening at any time. It's where do you even start? And so for us, what we did was we said, what's one of our biggest challenges? And for us, it was our review process. It was literally taking people 8 to 10 hours to write a review, and that's time away from clients, away from billable work. But it's part of our mission is to take care of our people. And so one of the first things we used AI to do is to streamline that process, to take our huge Excel framework, boil it down into something a prompt could understand, take 360-degree feedback, and create a review that then a human could review and then deliver to their mentee. And it's literally taken the process down to an hour from 8 to 10.
Wow.
We estimate it saved us $500,000, and we said, okay, where else can we use AI? We can use it to help with our marketing. We had a couple of new sellers, and they come on board and they're like, hey, where have we done this before? Where have we solved this problem? So we pointed AI at our CRM and then all our success stories and files, and we're able to very quickly ramp sellers up. And we were literally using it in every aspect of our business. And then I went on a road show talking to our clients and doing interviews and saying, we are going to be an AI first firm. So I had to take a top-down leadership approach, use AI myself daily. And ultimately what it evolved to is because we don't know which model is going to win. We don't know which technology platform is going to win. We ended up building our own.
Yeah.
So we ended up building our own interface to all the models, and we built our own agents on top of that. And we actually were showing that off at a couple of events, and we had clients look at us and say, can I buy that? And so now we're literally selling our solution accelerator along with our services, and we're not a product company. And it's tough because people are like, well, how's your product? I'm like, we're not a product. This is an accelerator. We built this for ourselves. But we think we've got lightning in a bottle here. So we're going to sell it to clients and then allow them to customize it. But then they're in control of their destiny. They've got their data and their systems within their walls. They've got this interface within their walls. And the only thing they're going out to is to the model providers to provide an answer. Because ultimately, data is your differentiator. And how you use it, how you prompt it, how you engage with it is what's going to be the differentiator. So it's why do you want to give that to somebody else? Not everyone's going to want to do it themselves. Some people are going to want to buy a license and say, I'm good. We've got Glean or Hebbia or Copilot, whatever the tool. But we're a big believer of we don't know where the market's going to go. So why not own your own destiny? But it's not affordable for everyone, but we believe that's the best path forward. At least that's what we're banking on.
Yeah, that's great. We're in the middle of all that conversation right now, and so it's it's very top of mind for me, and I think for a lot of business owners it is. You said we're going to be an AI first company, so how much time today is on AI versus sort of traditional legacy business?
We're doing AI in every project, and even if it's not a true AI project, I would say we've got over 200 developers. Everyone's using AI to help code. In fact, it's really interesting. We just launched a product called Sportsmo. It's a in-game interactive, think of ESPN app, but for college football, micro donations for the NIL space. So we built that for one of my YPO buddies, and we were able to build it in probably half the time and for half the cost that we've taken to build that traditionally. And we were able to provide more functionality in a shorter time frame than would have been possible without AI. And normally when you're developing software, you have what you call velocity, is how you determine how fast people are working. And normally over the course of, say, 20 weeks, you might double velocity. By implementing a bunch of AI tools along the process, we went 6x, just 600% improvement in productivity by implementing a bunch of AI tools as we were building the code. And so now every one of our projects uses that framework to build from. So I would say there isn't a single person within Allata that's not using AI for something, even if the project itself isn't an AI project.
That's incredible. Okay, last question, and then we'll wrap. So I know that you were super intentional about all of your personal planning going into your recap. Anything that you learned that you might have done differently in that process?
I would say don't try and get away from paying anything. So if someone comes to you with an idea around a 453 trust or something funky like that, just don't do it. It's generally not going to work out. So unfortunately, I listen to some yahoos who set me up with something that has cost a lot of time to unwind. So I would say get good planners and good help and professionals. And if someone tells you, hey, we can tax defer this or that, don't listen to them. It's BS.
And would you say, what would you say the right timeline is to sort of start the process to kind of get things in place so that at exit, everything's buttoned up?
If you're a business owner now.
Yesterday, maybe.
Set up slats, paying your kids. There's lots of cool things you can do as a business owner. So having a good advisor like your firm or others out there, I think is critical in setting things up early, because once you get really close to a process, it's a lot harder and there's a lot more things going on, and trying to fix things at the very last minute is a lot more difficult than you start. I started planning a couple years in advance. And we actually went through the process quicker. My original goal was 2025, and just market circumstances led us to, and the need to bring on offshore, nearshore talent had us go that path a little bit faster. So I was glad I had started a little bit in advance.
And you were ready. Awesome. Matt, thank you so much. It's been a great conversation, and it has been fast. So thanks for thanks for all that you've shared today. I know our listeners will really appreciate everything. Thank you for joining us on Decision Points.